Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we are talking about tough titties with Laura Belgray. Laura is an award-winning copywriter, founder of Talking Shrimp, and author of Tough Titties on living your best life when you're the fucking worst. She's written TV spots for clients like NBC, Fandango, and Bravo, and she helps entrepreneurs find words that make buyers go bananas. Her course with Marie Forleo, The Copy Cure, helps you find your voice and sell your anything. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Yes, thank you so much.
We first connected actually on Instagram because I realized that you and I went to the same school, and it was a very particular experience going to this school in New York City growing up. And I understand that in your new book, Tough Titties, you talk a bit about what it was like.
I do. I have a chapter called How to Be Popular, which was about
I never figured that out.
Me neither, as you'll see from the chapter. But it is about switching from my elementary school and middle school, Calhoun, which was an Upper West Side school, to Brearley, which was a totally different experience. Upper East Side, all girls, posh, although a little scrappy for the posh schools, but still posh, straight-laced, a bit formal, and very Upper East Side. Whereas Calhoun was very lax, progressive, Upper West Side, no walls between classrooms, that we called our teachers by their first names, et cetera, and then switched to Brearley, which is like the most traditional education where everyone had already taken Latin. And
yeah, since sixth grade.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I was there for 13 years, so I did all the things like French in third grade, Latin in sixth grade. And so how does, I just love your title. So I just want to come back to like living your best life when you're the fucking worst, because first of all, it just brings me so much joy. How does that shift figure into what you ended up writing about?
Oh, well, so that shift in that chapter, it is all about trying to fit in. I mean, the first chapter, which is called Deb Fishbone Likes This, is about hate following my sixth grade bully on social media years later, and what she did to me to basically ruin my life for a year for sixth grade. And so I was coming to it through the lens of fit in or die. When I switched schools. And it is all about trying to figure out how to fit into this new world of people who had a totally different attitude and aesthetic and, I don't know, worldview from the scrappy, Upper West Side kind of, I get to use a word that we no longer use, jappy crowd. And then Brearley was more waspy and pearl clutching, and Calhoun was more a culture of, when you were handed back a test, everyone would say, what'd you get, and you just shout out your grades, 80, 74, I got an A. And then I tried that at Brearley, like the first time we were handed something back at Brearley, and I said to somebody, what'd you get? And she was like, excuse me? And she folded over the corner of her paper over where the grade was to hide it, and like moved it and curled her arm around it. Like I had just asked, can I see your vagina?
Right. Wow. Yeah. Having grown up in that culture, it's really funny to hear about a different one, right? And that kind of pearl clutching and competitiveness. It's interesting because I was not part of the popular group.
Yeah.
And I'm not a WASP, so I was kind of an outlier culturally as well. I had to learn the customs too. But then to find out as adults, I'm wondering if you've noticed this now that we are, further along in life, when I meet up with one of my classmates, they're amazing women.
Oh, yeah.
And back then I felt tortured and, I'll never be like these amazing people. And all of a sudden here we are somehow as adults and everybody is so interesting and it's not about what we've accomplished, right? It's not
Right.
like, oh, well, I'm a senator, it's not that thing, although many burly girls are.
Yeah.
It's more just who they've become as people, who we've all become as people. So I'm curious, how did that happen?
I don't know. I mean, I think they are amazing people. So were the ones who I went to school with at the previous school, which I had come to know as, or dismiss as kind of the dumb school, because it was a learn at your own pace school, and kids who were, who struggled at other schools would come to that school and who were kicked out. And I felt like my parents had sort of, I went willingly, but yanked out my sister and then me to like get a proper education, because it wasn't cool to be smart there. Well, when I was there, I was the nerd who went upstairs to take math with the juniors and seniors when I was in like 7th grade.
Wow.
So I was this little twerp learning algebra with someone with a big Adam's apple and a peach fuzz mustache, or like a full mustache. It was very intimidating. And the, people would cheat off of me and stuff like that. But now, so I thought of it for all these years as like the screw up school, the dumb school. And now I recognize it's like, oh, it was a very creative kind of place, a hotbed for creative superstars. And like Jordan Peele went there. And
What?
yeah, and when I'm looking for reading recommendations, they often come from people I knew from that school, like on Facebook. They are the ones who are reading good books and have the best, the best book recommendations and otherwise. So I'm like, they're pretty extraordinary too. And so are the Brearley people. And I think people just, they grow and change. And it was an environment that nurtured intellect and curiosity. And I do have friends from Brearley who attend, like, who have book clubs where they dress up like the characters. That's a little farther than I would go. But it's cool. It's cool that they're so proudly intellectual, which is something you don't find so much in, say the online business world, where it's, people just want to read self-help books and
we're taught
business
that you
books.
have to write to a 4th grade or 5th grade level to be understood,
exactly. Right.
Yeah. I had to really tone it down when I started writing copy and things like that. I was like, oh, you mean they don't want to read my beautiful branching sentences with the syntax and the thing and the thing? Like, yeah, I had to really learn that. And so in terms of Tough Titties, tell me about where's it come from? It comes out today, which is super awesome that we're getting to talk. And tell me about it.
Okay, so it is a memoir and essays about a dork misfit coming of age in 80s, 90s, aughts New York, and late blooming into an unusual life and career. And the title, the working title for a while, where I was trying to figure out what is this book, was New Dork City. Most of the stories were things that, for a while, that was my theme, like stories that could only happen in New York. And then I was like, no, it's something bigger than that and more universal. And then I found myself saying something that I say all the time. One day it came out of my mouth. I said tough titties. And I was like, oh, I say that a lot because I'm 12 and emotionally, and also because it is my automatic response to anything that smacks of supposed to or should, any expectations that I just buck against. So-and-so thinks you should do it this way. You really shouldn't be doing blah, 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 or you should be here by now. And I'll just say tough titties to that. So it's tough titties to, it's a sorry, not sorry, refusal, a non-apology to, for rejecting the supposed to's, the shoulds, everyone else's timeline, because I am a late bloomer and I've never followed the straight path. It's always been a windy path to success in my life, and trying to find my thing and trying to find the person I'm meant to be with and all of that. It's been a pretty long, windy path that finally led me to where I'm supposed to be. So that's what it's
first of all, I love that. Like, you're my people.
So,
and I find it one of the things I've always loved, because I've been getting your emails for years, one of the things I've always loved about the way you write is that it is so you.
Thank you.
And it is so not like everybody else. And as you talk about the two different schools, it feels to me like Calhoun was probably pretty formative in your ability to hone that or be that. And Brearley didn't kill it, which is amazing.
Right. It is amazing. It tried.
It tried. It probably
It
tried to
tried.
make you write like everybody else, you know?
Yeah, not
Probably.
like everybody else, not right like everybody else, but it was what I would say, what I would call a fairly strict school, you know,
Yes.
traditional, and there were expectations to behave a certain way too. I think it enhanced my writing, like it, not that it taught me to write like me. I don't know if I had that much encouragement for that, but just my ability to write in a powerful way.
Yeah.
So, and the putting my personality into it really kind of came later, or when I was able to do creative projects there. But it was a fantastic school for reading and writing like that.
Absolutely.
What a great education, a great training in close reading, understanding the meanings, the like double and triple meanings of words and paragraphs and the nuances. So I'm happy that I had that education, and I have great friends from there, but it was a tough culture for me to fit into. And when you read it, you'll see like what it is framed by is me buying a wood file to take to my shoes, which were, I bought, everybody had Docksiders or Blukers, those, you know, what are those boat shoes? And I knew I had to have a pair, and I bought them. And I was like, there's something wrong with these. They don't look like everyone else's. And I realized everyone else's were worn in and beautifully patinaed by years of salt air corrosion and, you know, summers on a wharf or daddy's boat in places like Cape Cod and the Hamptons. And I didn't have any of that. So I bought a wood file to scuff up my shoes, and it was a disaster.
Oh my God, I cannot wait to read this. Because I've only read the first chapter that you sent out beforehand. So I'd like to, you mentioned finding the person you're meant to be with later in life, and my audience loves to hear about relationships and stuff like that. Would you be open to sharing that story?
Yeah, sure. Well, the story of how I met my husband, also a chapter in the book, it's called How I Met My Husband, is, I would say, it goes against all conventional and smart dating advice and wisdom out there, like, you know, make room in your life for love to come in, or you have to love yourself and have self-respect before anyone else can love you and respect you. And I met my husband, Stephen, when I was in a low, desperate place, and my life was very much cluttered by a toxic relationship with a married salsa instructor who I ended up being with for 2.5 years, waiting for him to divorce his wife, as he promised he would when we first met. And I didn't even really want to be with him, but I came to obsess over him and want him to, at least, you know, I didn't want to marry him, but I wanted him to be available to marry me. And
I so get that. I so get that.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't even like him. I wasn't interested in him when he started pursuing me. I was just obsessed with dance, and I became obsessed with salsa, and he was the salsa instructor, the class that I was going to. And, you know, we started flirting. I didn't even, he was a safe crush for me. It's like a big, fat, older man with a mustache. And I didn't even realize he had a wife, even though she was right there in the dance class teaching alongside him. But I think I made the mistake of sitting on his lap early on. And then he decided, well, this means we're meant to be together. And we started instant messaging on AOL. And his messages were horribly spelled. I mean, illiterate. And I was like, ew, this is disgusting. I don't want to be with this person. But he kept pursuing me. He was so persistent, and then threatened to withdraw his free dance lessons. And there's a word for what this makes me, but I was like, oh, okay, I will be with you for free dance lessons. And and then ended up, because of cognitive dissonance and all that, I convinced myself that I was in love with him. And then I was in love with him and obsessed with him. And so we were in this terrible relationship where I had already found out that he was cheating on me, and with not just with his wife, but with a younger Jewish girl in our dance group. And when I met my now husband, I was invited to this party it was someone's birthday party, somebody who I had met years ago when I was out going to bars right after college, going to bars like it was my job. And my parents were worried that I wasn't getting a job. And I would say, what are you doing out till 4 a.m.? And I would say, I'm networking, which isn't untrue. And, spoiler, some of the people I quote networked with ended up owning this restaurant years later, where I went to a birthday party, and it was one of the owner's birthday parties. So I reconnected with him, and Stephen, my husband, was there at the party. He was about to start working with them. He was in restaurants. He was the general manager of the opening GM of 11 Madison Park. So he'd worked for Danny Meyer, and now he was switching to working with these people. And so I went to this party thinking like it was a dance night, and I never skipped dance. And I was like, you know what? I have this feeling I have to go to this party. I was just feeling lonely, and I wanted to meet people who were like me and who saw movies that didn't have sharks in them, and or voodoo or evil priests. And yeah, I just wanted to connect with people, with my kind of people who made me feel like me again. And I just had this feeling that I should skip dance and go to this party. And I went to it, and it started at a bar, and then it was on a boat sailing around the New York harbor. And I started talking to this guy, Steven, and we clicked instantly. Like, I enjoyed talking to him so much. And we were talking about boogie nights and looking up the New York skyline. This was right before 9/11. This was August 30th, 2001. And just hit it off. And I was like, this is the kind of guy I should be with if only he were straight. It's like, it didn't even occur to me that he was straight. He had like the cool jeans on that were cuffed just so, and he had slightly femme cadence to his voice, and we hit it off so well that I just assumed he was gay, because I just wanted to keep talking to him. And the next time I saw him was on September 11th. The towers had come down. Yeah. So my sister and I had been uptown at my parents' house all day watching the footage with my mom and then my dad. And we were feeling a little cooped up by the end of we'd seen the footage over and over and over like everyone else. And we wanted to be around people, and parents don't count. So
yeah, you're right. They're not people.
No, they're not people. And so I called the owner. It was that day where you called everybody in your life who you knew to see if they were okay. And one of those was the owner of this restaurant whose birthday it had been. And he was like, thank you for checking in, doing fine. We closed the restaurant for the day, but we have just friends and family here. We've got food, come on down. So my sister and I went there, and Stephen was there with a girlfriend. He said, hey, I've met you. This is my girlfriend. And I was like, oh, and that, that moment should be the record scratch of like, girlfriend. But for me, it was like, ding.
Possibility.
Not gay. Yes, he's straight. And that put him on my radar. And they opened the restaurant a couple months later, and I started going there regularly, and I had a little bit of a crush on him. I could tell he had a little crush on me, but I was still with the bad married boyfriend. And he had his stuff too. He kept saying, oh, I have to tell you about my stuff. And we started going on friend dates and emailing. And I would email him and then not hear back for like 3 weeks. And normally, if I had been single, if I had been available and free and clear and in a good headspace, I would have obsessed and like restarted my router a million times. But back then it was a dial-up modem. And just been like, why doesn't he like me? What's going on? Why hasn't he emailed me back? I didn't even think about it for a second. I was like, oh, I sent that a while ago. Oh, well, because I was so obsessed with the toxic relationship that was taking up space in my life. And so it all worked out. We ended up, he ended up ending things with his girlfriend. I ended things with bad boyfriend, and we were free and clear to be together. And that's how we met. That's how.
And how much later was that?
Couple months. So we started going on friend dates. So yeah, 9/11 happened, it's September 11th. And then we started going on friend dates in January. He asked me out, like said to me, he semi-asked me out. He was like, hey, I'm going away for the holidays, but when I get back, you want to grab a bite or something? And I was like, yes. And so we went on our first friend date in January. And then like over the course of a few months, we went on friend dates that we knew weren't all that kosher, but we kind of agreed if we were, we're both in relationships, but if we were single, maybe we'd be together. And then we were by like March. Passover was the first time he met my parents and came over. Yeah. And so, as we know, that was 22 years ago, right?
Wow.
Ish.
I wanna highlight for the folks who are single and dating, one of the things that, all toxicity aside, one of the things that really works well in your story is having a distraction. Because what a lot of us do way too soon when we like somebody is we focus this laser beam of our attention in their direction. Even if we're suppressing the desire to text or write, there's still this laser of energy moving toward a person that can blow them out.
Yes.
Before you even get started, right? And so the beauty, I'm sorry, it was a toxic, et cetera. And how perfect that you had this distraction that was compelling enough that you didn't sort of turn this entire trove of your desire at Stephen right away.
Yes.
Right? And that way it had a chance and it had air to breathe and find its own space and rhythm and connection without the pressure. So that when you could be together, you could really be together.
Yeah, I think it's so hard or maybe impossible to fake not caring, to fake holding something lightly. It cannot be done. So I needed that distraction. I needed it in order to actually hold this relationship lightly. And
I think most of us do. Yeah, I think
most
of us do, because you can't fake it. And it's when you're faking it, it's also, being built on sand, right? So having an honest distraction that's real. So this is what I suggest to people who are dating is like, date multiple people. Don't put all your eggs in the basket of the person. Like if you like somebody, that's your cue that you need to go find 3 other people to go on dates on, just so you don't get too focused too soon, and let the thing focus naturally in its own time. So thank you for illustrating that point so beautifully. And so how is he also a writer? Like, now, or is he purely restaurant
He's
business?
Still a restaurant person. He, worked in restaurants for 30 years, maybe 40 years. And then he quit the last one he was at just before the pandemic and was like, I'll figure out, take a couple of months and figure out what I want my next project to be. And then, pandemic hit, and it was like, no way in hell do I want to go back into restaurants right now and like be the one coordinating takeout and, dealing with masks and all of that, and risking my health. I mean, he was 60 at the time. And so it was about a good 3 years, 2 years and change. And he loved it at first, like not being semi-retired. He was like, oh, I'm going to go back. I'll find a project eventually. But he kind of loved not going into work, not dealing with it anymore, and had already started feeling like I'm too old for this shit. So just recently, a friend that he used to work with, he ran Postrio in San Francisco together with this friend, hit him up, said, hey, this friend has been working in design for the last few years, and said, I've got all these projects being thrown at me and I need somebody to come on board and help me with them. And I don't know anybody else with your level of taste, because Stephen has incredible taste. He's just great with the design and a huge design nerd. So with your taste and also understanding of how restaurants work and how the flow needs to happen, what needs to go where. So he brought Stephen on board, and Stephen has been doing all these restaurant design projects now, and it's perfect. It's something, it's made for him. Like, and now he doesn't have to, go into the kitchen and expedite when they're running behind.
Exactly. I mean, he can do the fun part without the pressure of the line being, that
exactly.
And so how do you two, I'm always curious as a fellow creative, how to navigate inspiration, creative pushes, deadlines, things like that, with staying connected to another human, right? Because I can very easily get into a space where, like, I don't shower for 3 days, I'm writing, I'm doing the thing, right? And so how do you do that?
Well, it has been challenging. On the one hand, I've loved having him home. I love being around him. I like it when he comes home. I miss him when he's not here. And also he makes our life very nice. You'll start to understand why I thought he might be gay. He is great at flower arrangements. He makes tableaus on our bookshelves of objects, art, and he collects art. He's an art fanatic, and everything is laid out nicely. He's always had this sort of nightmare fantasy of someone breaking into the apartment and finding it messy. So he always has it neat and has, magazines fanned out. And he also cooks, and just he makes my life. And I don't do any of these things. I'm terrible at them. I'm the frat boy. So so I love that part of it. On the other hand, I do get into this head where sometimes I'm just too busy, I'm focused, I have too much lined up, and I'm in that headspace of like, I have to get this email written, and then I owe this thing, and I still haven't figured out what I'm going to say on this training, or like I have a podcast coming up, and he'll try to be nice to me or joke around with me, and I'll sort of like absentmindedly say like, yeah, that's funny, or just echo what he said, like, no, you're a doo-doo head. And he's like, you're just humoring me, you're no fun. And so it can be challenging to, like, I don't want to be rude. I don't have my own dedicated office space where I shut the door. Everything, our apartment is a little bit open concept, and so there's a bit of a free-flowing thing where I have to tell him, I have to pretend that I'm not here or pretend that he's not here. And so I feel rude a lot of the time. And then also there are things that I'm not taking care of, like, well, say showering some days. He's like, you haven't showered yet? I'm like, well, no, I will when I have a minute. And that happens later in the day. Or I order a bunch of things from like Shopbop, and Neiman Marcus. Right now I have all these Neiman Marcus boxes because I'm trying to find the right summer shoe, and I haven't been successful. And he's just like, when are these boxes going back? When are you going to take these up and send these back? I'm like, I will when I'm done with my day. I can't do it right now. I cannot. So
I'm the same.
Yeah. So it makes me a difficult partner to live with. And yeah, sometimes I have to kick him out of the house. I'm like, I'm starting a podcast, I'm starting a training, and I don't want you to be there listening. And he's not that interested anyway, but I feel so self-conscious when he's
But you
sitting
can
there.
you can feel it. You can feel the other person in the space.
Exactly.
And
I'll stumble over.
changes.
Right. It does. And I'll stumble over a word and feel like, oh, he just heard me do that. Now he's going to be worried that I blew it. Yeah.
Which is just our internalized shit.
Of course.
Right? That's
of
our
course
voice. Yeah. Because I mean, it's very similar with Patrick, my fiance. He's never judging me like that, right? He's never, and sometimes I'm similar in that I'm in the middle of a thing and then he comes over and wants to connect and I just don't have it. I can't, like the switch can't move fast enough.
Yeah.
And that's something I've had to work on and also end up teaching a lot to my clients is how to become more I call it energetic agility, like how to become more agile at shifting your energy between the thing you're hyper focused on and the completion and the creative and the, it's like that's a vertical channel, right? Between you and your muse. To me, it occurs vertically in my body. I don't know about for you, but it's kind of like there's this, I'm receiving from the muse, and then all of a sudden I'm supposed to relate horizontally to another person in my space. And I'm like, wait, I can't make that shift fast enough, right? And so have you developed, I mean, sometimes I have like, I need to take a bath to make the switch, or I will literally say, I'm not available for this yet. Like I'm still here. I'm not, give me a minute, right? Let me go in the other room and like switch the thing. And then I can come out and talk to you, right? Have you figured out ways to shift yourself effectively, or is it still super crunchy?
It's not super smoothly. I will sometimes have to announce, I can't be nice to you right now.
Exactly.
I can't be fun. I can't be fun right now. I have something to do in 5 minutes. I'm getting on a podcast, can't be fun. And he'll be like, all right, well, you won't have me to kick around anymore. He's okay with it, but it's still a little bit of a conflict. Like I still feel bad and I know I'm being a jerk, but I'm like, also like letting him know this is my jerk. I'm in the jerk zone.
Exactly. That's a kindness actually, to let somebody know you're in the jerk zone is actually kind.
Right.
Like, let me forewarn you. Not available.
Danger. Police tape.
Danger.
Don't cross.
Danger. Tread at your own risk. Yeah. So you brought a wonderful free gift to share with folks, which I'm so excited for them to get. And it's called Story Goldmine. And the reason I love it is because our stories are useful not only for our businesses, for those of us in the audience who are entrepreneurs, but also people who are dating or anytime you need to tell stories in your life, which is often, this is such a treasure trove of ideas. So can you talk a bit about it?
Thank you. Yeah. So it's Story Goldmine is 63 surprising places to mine your everyday life for stories that sell, or just, it doesn't have to be actually literal selling, can be just selling you, getting commanding attention, commanding the room. And it is great for anyone who thinks like, oh, I don't have any interesting stories. Like, oh, nice for you. You always have, you live in New York City. You always have something happening. Nothing happens here. That's not true at all. And if you look through it, you'll see you have so much to talk about and so many stories in you and so many things to say. And for those of you who do want to use it to like for an audience, for an email, for your content, for anything like that, a sales page. I even have a bonus section in there that explains how to connect your story to a takeaway, to a call to action, or to something you're selling, so that it feels like a smooth segue and not like a clunky, anyway, or so
Right.
that you don't end it with like and it was really embarrassing. The end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, so now buy my shit.
Right. Yeah. Speaking
Right.
of nothing, buy my shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're such a master of that. I love that you included that bonus, because that's one of the things I am very attuned to in your emails. I'm always watching that turn because you do it really beautifully. So I'm psyched that
Thank you.
people get to check that out. And Tough Titties is available today everywhere. And
Yes, it is.
I want everyone to read this book, because I just adore your writing. And yeah, people
Thank
need
you
to read this
so
book.
much.
Also, there's the
Mhm.
self-permission. I feel like, all fun aside, there's the deep self-permission I feel in how you share about your life, how you encourage other people to write about their lives, and to live in a world that there's often so much pressure to be the same, or to conform, or to fit in and be appropriate, especially
Yeah.
as women. To have that permission to be yourself in the up, the down, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the fun and the quirky and the sad. Like, to me, that's a deeply noble, even though you couch it with a lot of humor, it's a deeply noble mission. If I may use a heavy
Thank
word,
you. Thank you. I
it's
like it.
just,
Yeah.
it's something deeply needed and liberatory. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Well, we're talking about relationships, and I think really the end goal for anyone, whether they know it or not, is to be in a relationship where they feel most like themselves. And when you are as much as of yourself as you can possibly be, when you're unapologetically you make other people feel more like themselves. So basically you're creating that relationship, whether they know you or not, even if they're just in your audience, where they feel connected with you and they feel more alive and more like themselves because you are more of yourself. So it's a contagious thing. It's a ripple effect. They pass it on to the next person. And so, yeah, I think it is a noble mission. Thank you.
Yeah. And we are doing something very similar, because that's exactly what I'm doing with my work too. So I love
Yes.
it. There's so many ways to liberate ourselves
Yes.
and each other. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. This has been Tough Titties with Laura Belgray. Go get the book. And remember, until next time, a great relationship starts with you.